This is a relatively quick walkthrough of the Polaris Valuation spreadsheet, particularly its VBA code and the some of the stored procedures and such that are back on the back-end SQL Server database. As a reminder, the purpose of the spreadsheet is to recreate what the calculations that occur in the Polaris Investing website, and then allow the user of the spreadsheet to go further than what you can do on the website. There is a user's guide available out on the Polaris Investing YouTube channel under the Polaris Valuation App playlist called User's Guide. Okay, let's quickly go through the tabs here from right to left. The Manage tab is used for configuring the application. In this application, there's only two user inputs, namely you can specify whether to keep narratives around as you're exiting the program, or whether a pop-up appears after saving a narrative. These other values are populated when the spreadsheet is first opened. So typically a user will hide this. The TrustIt, informational only, is hidden. There's no VBA code behind either one of those tabs I just hid. Since this video was originally recorded, two new worksheets have been added, namely Topical and Candidates. The Topical worksheet lists stocks that you may find of interest. This list is frequently updated when a new version of the spreadsheet is released. The Candidates worksheet allows you to modify this query to retrieve stocks that you're specifically interested in, and to then explore further by using the Valuation worksheet. It's suggested these two worksheets be hidden when not used. Narratives is where narratives are actually stored, but there is no VBA code behind this. The Polaris Data worksheet is where data is stored that's pulled from the Polaris backend database specific to a ticker. Over here is shown the backend stored procedure that's invoked in order to pull this data, but there's no VBA code behind this worksheet. The About is purely informational, no VBA code. Dropbox, same thing, information only. So it leaves just the Valuation worksheet that has VBA code behind it. So let's go look and see how the VBA code is laid out. When you go over to look at the code, first thing you'll be asked for is the password. It's the same password that's used for other spreadsheet applications. Alright, so once this password is entered, let's look at how these different modules are laid out. Modules 1 through 4 are common routines across multiple spreadsheets that are developed by Polaris, so nothing special in this spreadsheet. Module 5 and Module 6, though, do have some specific VBA code to this project that we'll be covering. And then, like I already mentioned, most of the worksheets don't have VBA code. The only ones that do is the Valuation worksheet, and then this workbook has code that's executed when you're right after you've opened the spreadsheet and right before you close it. As already mentioned, since originally recording this video, two new worksheets have been added, Topical and Candidates, since this video was originally recorded. Candidates does have some VBA code in. So let's go through what that code does. When the user hits enter from the cell A2, this code takes over for the change to that cell, and this is where it detects the change to the cell. Then it clears out the area where the results set will be displayed. And then it calls this subroutine to have the SQL command that was entered in cell A2 executed. So let's go look at that subroutine, which is down here, candidates query, and it just makes an ADO call, and it just passes in exactly what was in cell A2, and then it gets back a result set, transposes what is comes back from ADO, and then it does a loop here capturing the field names associated with that result set, and then if it completed successfully, it'll say success. And so what's returned back is the completion status, the results set, and an array that has the names of the fields. Returning back to the subroutine that called, or that query executed, we pick up here where then it looks and sees if it was successful. If it was, it comes down here and it loops through and checks the current field names that are listed on this candidate's worksheet with the field names that came back with the query, because the user could type in, if they wanted to, a custom query that would return back possibly a different result set. So it's checked to see if it's the default query result set or not, and it does that by looping through and checking for the field names in the exact order expected for the default query result set. Based on that, it'll, if it is the typical fields for the default query, it'll then determine exactly where to put the result set. If it's not the standard query, it will then hide row 14 and 15 and then put the custom query field names here in row 16, and then the results themselves in 17 and beyond. And that's what's being done in this code here in the else part. Now, the primary reason for handling the default query differently than custom queries is to keep the comments and formatting in row 14 that are specific to the default query. So again, if it's not the default query, these two rows are hidden, and then starting in row 16, the names for the fields are displayed there, and then the results set in 17 and beyond. Also, at the end of the subroutine here, it calculates the number of rows in the result set and the time that this query is run, and those are displayed here and here. Since the previous segment was recorded, a new worksheet has been added called Queries. It keeps a list of all the queries that a user can run and even add to. Each query is given a name and then the query. The default query is candidates. Here's the actual query, and some additional queries have been populated. This one called DB objects, if users want to go out and better understand the back-end database and what's available in terms of tables, views, and stored procedures. How this works is that a drop-down has been added here. This shows the names of the existing queries. And then the VBA code that's been added is right here in the change event. It looks for a change to A1 on the candidate's worksheet, and then it loops through the different names of queries in column A on the queries worksheet, and then where it the row that it finds that name, it'll then grab from the column next to it, column B, the actual query, and put it in A2 on the candidate's worksheet, and then that'll cause the query to be executed. Also, some VBA code has been added for formatting. After the query is run, all the columns on the candidate's worksheet are auto-fitted. And one other change was made unrelated to this query worksheet, a slight bug here, and so this line here has been changed as well. So let's talk about the VBA code that's in these different modules, starting off with here in this workbook. Then right after the workbook opens, let's make sure that we're in the automatic calculation mode. And then the main thing is this calls this subroutine called SystemCheck, and then it positions the cursor over the E2 cell in the valuation worksheet, which is where user enters a ticker. Now, when the spreadsheet is first downloaded from the internet, this subroutine will not be allowed to run. And the spreadsheet still should run properly, but one of the things that's done in SystemCheck that won't happen is the computer name and username will not be properly identified. So any logging that goes on during the time the spreadsheet is first downloaded and opened until it's closed and reopened won't be logged properly. Besides that, not calling the SystemCheck is doesn't cause that many problems, but it's preferred that the user download the application, enable external content, save the spreadsheet, and then reopen it. Since this video was originally recorded, there has been some additional code added here in the Workbook Open subroutine that checks for a value on the Manage tab to see if it's set to Manage or not, and specifically cell K1, and if it's not, sets it back to Manage. This has to do with here in the spreadsheet, this drop down, whether it's displaying the drop down list from the Manage tab or possibly the list of stocks here in the candidate, or the list of stocks here in the topical. But when the spreadsheet's reopened, it's put back to drop down list here in the Manage worksheet. This other subroutine that gets executed right before the workbook is closed simply looks to see if there are any narratives stored on the narrative worksheet, and if the user is enabled on the Management tab to for this pop-up to be displayed, it'll ask if the user is sure that they want to delete. Typically, this is value on the Management worksheet is set to keep, so the prompt is it's not even, or the message never appears, and it's just assumed that the user wants to keep the narratives on the narratives worksheet. All right, next I'm going to go off and look at the subroutines and functions that are in this Module 5. Module 5 contains functions that make calls to the back-end database for various reasons. So this first one, TickerData, one of the primary functions is called because it's called over and over again every time a ticker is entered, and it goes out and grabs the ticker data that's shown on that Polaris data worksheet. It clears out the landing area on that Polaris data worksheet, and then populates the values, and then the valuation spreadsheet has formulas that make reference to specific cells in the Polaris data worksheet. This next function just simply calls the backend database to see if it can be reached. And here's the actual stored procedure that's attempted to be executed on the backend server. No operation. It's just seeing if it can be the database can be reached or not. Latest version simply goes out and pulls this view and gets the latest version of the spreadsheet. Message board goes out and grabs a message. The computer name and username are passed in, so on the stored procedure side back in SQL Server, if there was a specific message for the computer and user, it could use this information, reply back with a specific message. Next function, spreadsheet open, logs information at the time the spreadsheet is open, namely computer name, username, what the spreadsheet name is, should be Polaris Valuation, but the user could have changed it. What version they're currently running on, what's the Excel version are they using, and even the public IP address. Now the public IP address could possibly change, so it's has no specific purpose right now. Next function is NarrativeLog, which gets called whenever the user selects Save Narrative, and it stores not only the text narrative but all the values that went into the valuation calculation along with it. This is more for archiving. It's never retrieved back and used by the spreadsheet, but just a log on the back end, in the back end SQL Server database, and gives an opportunity to see what kind of valuations users are coming up with, and the input that they're using to come up with those valuations. Since this video was originally recorded, some additional information is now passed into the NarrativeLog, namely this information here that deals with default cost of equity, the risk-free rates, the equity risk premium, and the betas, so that if need be, some point if a question comes up, how the default cost of equities recalculated. The information is now being logged with each save of a narrative. TickerLog, every time a user enters a new ticker, information about ticker name and computer and username. This is purely for logging. It's not ever retrieved and used back in the spreadsheet. It just gives an idea what kind of activities or kind of tickers that the users are entering, and also the price at the time that they enter the ticker. Next one is Billboard, and that's just a revolving billboard area on the valuation screen that gets displayed. And so every time this function is called, the backend store procedure currently uses a random number generator and randomly selects from several possible billboards to be displayed. And the last function in this module 5 is a function called Lookup Ticker that allows the user to enter a partial company name, and then a query is called to see if, based on that fragment of the company name, we can determine what the ticker is. And then it either returns the ticker, or nothing was found. It just returns the ticker unknown. Okay, let's go look at Module 6 now. Module 6 does not have any functions or subroutines in it that go over the internet and try to pull any data from anywhere. They're just subroutines that are used by the valuation worksheet to do things. First off is, or the ThisWorkBook worksheet. The first off is the SystemCheck, and that was called is called when the workbook is first opened. I should mention before we get into that, there are some global constants and variables. One is this first one is used just for when videos are shot, so that user sees a similar thing on the screen from video, from session to session. 0 means normal mode, 1 means hey, you're in a video record mode. So that just means that certain things are displayed for price and things like, and the ticker is always assumed to be Walmart. Here's where the version information, the version of the worksheet or spreadsheet that the user is currently using is set. And then you have 2 global variables, one for name of computer and name of user. So let's go look at SystemCheck here. First of all, does this check to see if you're in video record mode, and then it just shows it when the spreadsheet is first opened. This message is displayed just to remind user that you're in video record mode. This is really only for me, a developer, a recorder of a video that would ever set this to anything besides normal. All right, next thing it does is it records the date, the time, the name of the worksheet, and the spreadsheet version, which is coming out of this global variable, into specific cells on the management worksheet. And that's just so that this kind of information doesn't have to be looked up over and over again. Specifically, anything to do with time. If you're calling the now function, as known as a volatile function, that is bad practice to have that embedded in cells throughout your code. So call it once here and then have a cell that can be referenced for current time. Now, it's not obviously the exact current time. Trade-off is that if the spreadsheet's open for a long time and other cells are using this value for current time, the longer the spreadsheet's open, the more off that is. All right, next thing it does is it checks the Excel version and then throws up a message if it's not of at least 2016 or version 16.0. Checks to see if they have internet connection, and does that 2 different ways. Check, first of all, that routine there goes off and calls or attempts to connect with Google. This connects with the backend Polaris database. If either one of those fail, then it assumes that don't have internet access. Here it's making note of the computer name and username. These aren't particularly expensive calls, built-in function calls, but just good practice to do it one time and then have global variables here that are contain them and can be referenced anywhere else in the code. Okay, next we log what's going on. We've already been through this function in module 5. And then if the version of the spreadsheet that we made out of this variable is not equal to what was just retrieved from the backend SQL Server database to calling this latest version, we throw up a message that says you're not on the latest version of the spreadsheet. And then last part of this function called SystemCheck is to see if there's a message, and if it's a blank message that gets returned from this function call, then no message is displayed. All right, the next function in this module is just a function that gets called several places that walks through the narrative worksheet looking to identify the last row in column A, and it checks the first 5,000 rows. So if you had more than 5,000 tickers that you've been looking at over time and never deleted them, then this wouldn't work properly, but it assumes that there'll be 5,000 or less rows occupied in that narratives worksheet. If it doesn't find the ticker that it was asked to look for, then it returns the next available row. Since this video was originally recorded, another function very similar to the narrative find row function has been added called the portfolio find row. The main difference is the column of tickers that it searches for a specific passed-in ticker. In the narrative find row, we're working against the column A in the narratives worksheet, but in the portfolio find row function, we're working against column that's in the manage worksheet. And one tricky thing that's involved in this function is that I had to add one because the column in the manage worksheet could just have a single member. This won't load properly because the variant nature of the portfolio array, it won't be recognized as an array. So add one to the last row to make sure that this is loaded properly as an array. Next function is restoring the narrative, which is this area over here. If it had been previously saved and now I enter the ticker again over here, it will repopulate that through this function call here. Restore formulas, that's called every time a new ticker is entered. It's just with a lot of user input on this in this valuation worksheet, fairly easy for a user to be on the wrong cell and accidentally overwrite a formula or whatever in that cell. So now we have a function every time a new ticker is entered, this function gets called and all the formulas on the valuation worksheet are restored. Okay, so now we've been through the code that's the VBA code that's in Module 6, Module 5, and here in this workbook function. So already mentioned all these other worksheets do not have any VBA codes. So the only other VBA code is here in the valuation worksheet. There are two event subroutines in the valuation worksheet, namely the change event, and then down here a little bit further is the subroutine for the selection change event. When this video was originally recorded, there was only one cell E2, looked for in this change event. Since the original recording, there's now two cells looked for, the other one being cell E1. And when E1 is changed, then there's a search done for the fragment of company name that's entered in cell E1, and then a pop-up box is displayed based on whether that fragment of company name was able to resolve into a ticker name or not. And then the E2 cell, which is in the original recording, there was just one line of code added to accommodate what's going on here around the change in cell E1. Now, returning to the original video, cell E2 is where the user enters a ticker. So if a new ticker is entered, we suspend calculations so that not a lot of recalculating as we go in and populate different cells. And when we're all done, we then allow calculation to occur again. So in between stopping calculation and starting it back up, the code now goes out and grabs the previous trading date price. And if the previous trading date price is not greater than 0, I'm going to come down here and display a message. We're assuming that means that they've entered an invalid ticker if we can't find a price for it. And it just throws up a pop-up box. Assuming it is a valid ticker, the price is greater than 0. Since this video was originally recorded, an additional step has been added once it's determined the price is greater than 0 and therefore it's a valid ticker, which is to call a subroutine called Manage Drop-Down Ticker List, which is here in Module 6. And what this subroutine does is it manages the column M in the Manage worksheet, which is drop-down list, which shows up here. The user now has the option of either typing in a ticker or selecting a previous ticker that's now part of this drop-down list. And so the management of that list involves moving what's in column M into a ticker array, and then it places the most current selection made by the user to the top of that array list, and then looks for anything else in the list that's already that name, and if it finds the name already in the list, puts a blank in that row, and then it moves everything up. And so what you end up with is in column M is a list of recently selected or typed in values here in the valuation E2 drop-down list. All right, now back to the original video. Then it does a quick check to see if we're in video record mode, and if it is, we'll populate the price in cell D2 with a very specific price for Walmart, and then a specific date and even a change in price. But it does assume the ticker that's entered in E2 is Walmart. Now it doesn't enter the ticker, because otherwise you just get in this constant loop of as soon as you come in with E2 value, and we set E2, it would, it doesn't work. So you got to just, if you're in video record mode, it's assumed you know to enter the ticker symbol Walmart. All right, next it goes and it logs the ticker. We've been through that little function already of what it's logging and why it's logging. Next it displays the Billboard message. First of all, it saves the previous Billboard message because of the way that it revolves around different Billboard messages. If this newest Billboard message is the same as the previous one, then there's a the area where the billboard is displayed will fade and not be in bold. That way, the user visually sees new information or new billboard. And so, if it's the same billboard information as the previous billboard message, we have to keep track of that in the code so we know whether it's changed or not. All right, we restore all the formulas, been through that code. Restore the narratives for a specific ticker, we've been through that code. And then we go off here and we retrieve the data that gets put in on that Polaris data worksheet. If it fails, we throw up a message that says we're unable to get to the data Polaris backend database. Then we clear the cells where the users could have the option of providing input. So every cell that has gray or dark gray, that's where users are expected to provide input. So we can clear all those out. And then we've been through that else clause where we talk about if the price is not greater than 0. All right, so that's the main code for a change or a new ticker being typed in cell E2. Now, all the selection change code really is about the user clicking in different places on the valuation worksheet. And for example, here, if I type in a value for a profit margin of 2.5%, I can click over here and have it automatically clear it. So a lot of that kind of clicking that goes on, or over here, if I click here, it automatically populate that input with that value. And I'm not going to go through. You can watch the other video that talks about the use of the spreadsheet for more information about this. But as far as the code, what it's doing in this section is this is looking for different ranges of cells and then either putting the cursor back in specific spots, or if it's here, it's clearing. If it's somewhere in this range, it'll then either clear out both values in the range or clears out individual values based on what they typed in. So several pieces of code like that that are clearing out user input areas, or primary clearing. So here we are clearing again another area. Since this spreadsheet was originally recorded, slight change in one area that was cleared out primarily to clear the user input. Instead of doing that, a different way is done now, where it's called a quick ticker input. If the user selects on a cell, namely this cell here that's right to the right of the ticker in E2, so F2, if they click on F2, then we simply set E2 to itself, which is kind of odd, but what that does is it invokes a change event, and it's just like as if the user typed in the same ticker, and that would, through that code, clear all the input and kind of reset and get everything all ready for the next ticker that was just entered. Okay, just went through this quick ticker input, or when the user clicks F2. Since then, also added some additional code here. And this quick partial company code is if user clicks G1, it'll clear what is been entered here as in E1 for a partial company name. Now this other code is involved with toggling between different drop-down menus here in E2. Right now it's showing the Manage drop-down, and the Manage list is here in column M of the Manage worksheet. But you can also have other drop-down lists, namely from the candidates list of these tickers, or from Topical. The way that's done is here in the VBA code. It dynamically walks through what's currently the drop-down list in K1 of the Manage worksheet. So if you wanted to add other lists, user would need to add it by going to Data and then Data Validation, and then adding here. Then here in this VBA code, it dynamically walks through that list in that particular cell, K1, and then a round robin between those. Every time B1 is selected, it'll this formula here in B1 is just taking the leftmost character of what's currently selected in K1. This clues the user as to the active drop-down list. So as you select here, you'll go back to the Manage, you'll see it now round robin through those different items in the list. And one other thing needs to be done to get the drop-down list to appear in E2 is you go out here to Data Validation. I'm not going to go through it here, but you would need to change this code here. Recently I've added yet another addition here to the selection change code. This latest addition allows a user to simply click on cell A2, and then they get presented with a message asking are they sure they want to clear the Manage drop-down list. So here on the candidates worksheet, just here, when I do the drop-down, I'm seeing currently, let's say Walmart and Microsoft as for the Manage drop-down. But if I click here, it says, are you sure you want to clear? And then when I go down and look now, there's nothing in the drop down. So it's a way to quickly reset the Manage worksheet without having to go over here to the Manage tab and then doing a clear. Yeah, another addition has been made here called the quick add to the active portfolio. When the user clicks on C2 on the valuation worksheet, namely here where it's titled ticker, the current value of the ticker in cell E2 is then pinned to the bottom of the active portfolio list, and it finds the location by calling this portfolio find row, which was discussed earlier. Okay, now returning back to the original video, and then here we get into copying. Depending on if they click on something, we'll automatically copy values in user input areas. So this one, S1, that'll copy a whole group of information. Otherwise, you're copying individual values depending on exactly which cell they clicked on. This is for the other values areas, which is this in or other values in here or in here, and same kind of things depending on where they click, things get populated. Now the save narration that has to do with if the user clicks the save button here in U1, then we have another area in the code that takes action if this code or if this cell over here is clicked on. In fact, I'll go ahead and scroll down here. That if it's cell 80, we just clear the contents of the narrative text and then return the cursor to a specific spot. But coming back up here, if they click to save the narrative, then first of all, we've got to make sure that we're dealing with a valid ticker. And the way that's done at this point in the code is previously when a ticker was entered and we are in this code here, we will go look up the company name and display it, namely here in cell E3. If it's not a valid ticker, then we set that to invalid ticker here. So now we're down at this point in the code where we're saving a narrative, and we want to make sure that we save a narrative for a valid ticker. So it checks that area to see if it was marked as invalid. If it's valid, then we just look to see if the narrative is currently blank or not. If it's blank and the user hits the narrative text is blank, and now the user hits save, we're assuming they want to clear. So it's just simply clearing out all the values that make up the non-text portion of the narrative. If they hit save of a valid ticker, but there's never been a previous narrative, that's okay. It just blanks out the next free row, and that row was already blank anyway, so it just stays blank. Now if it finds it, you notice here that it then moves all the data into, after calling here at the beginning, looking for the first row that may have the ticker. And if it doesn't have the ticker, then we're off on a new row. And that's why you got to write the ticker, because you aren't sure you're dealing with an existing ticker in the narrative or a new ticker. And so just rewrite the ticker over based on the found row, and then writes all the values. Since this video was originally recorded, some additional information that is saved along with the narrative that has to do with capital asset pricing model information about the default cost of equity stage 1 and the default cost of equity stage 2. This is saved in the narrative way over in these columns here, namely AI through AR, and then they are logged back in the SQL Server database, but they're never restored. They're not used anywhere in the valuation. They're just simply something that's saved in with the narrative. And if the user ever needed to go back and check the details of what the default cost of equities were and how they were calculated, at least the information is here in the where the narratives is stored, and so it'd be kind of a low-level thing for an end user to do. And then we log the information about the narrative that's being saved. We've already been through that function. Next, the restore narrative function is called to display all the narrative data, including values in column S. Since narrative data was just saved, values in column S will be current. A message is displayed that the user has the option on the Manage tab of our worksheet of either enabling or disabling whether this pop-up appears. But right, the default is it's enabled, so every time a save is complete, status comes up and indicates that it's complete. If invalid ticker, then it shows this message. Since this video was originally recorded, a new worksheet has been added to the Polaris Valuation spreadsheet. Worksheet is called Valuation_DCF. Now going to go through the VBA code that is associated with that worksheet. The worksheet's VBA code consists of several subroutines and 2 event handlers, namely here for selection change and the worksheet change event. Backing up here to the selection change event, it handles selections dealing with either a request to update the stock price or the showing and hiding of rows and dealing with gold seek. To initiate a stock price change, user selects J1. You can see here the VBA code. We'll update the ticker with the current ticker. J1 is selected, I1 is updated, and then that causes this H1 function, price now, be invoked. When the user selects D1, D2, D3, D5, F4, F5, they're making changes to the visible rows, and this VBA code in here handles that. This code results in subroutines being called that are up here at the top, and I won't go through the details of each subroutine, but they just have to do with either hiding or showing rows. To assist updating this VBA code, if new rows were added or existing rows deleted, here in the Manage tab, you scroll over, see here in column BD, the tracking of changed rows. Okay, back here to the Select Change Event Handler. If the user selects cell X79, which is labeled goal seek, then this code is executed. You can see here that it does make sure that the worksheet is in theoretical mode and that there's values in certain places. If not, a message is displayed. Otherwise, goal seek is run. Okay, now looking at the worksheet change event code, see here that if a new ticker is entered in I1, that same value is placed in the DCF data worksheet cell B1, causing the data in that worksheet to be updated. These next 2 blocks of codes have to do with cell D3, either changing the word from practical to theoretical or theoretical to practical, and then toggling the hiding or showing of rows based on the selection made. All right, in this last block of code is no longer needed and has been deleted. Since this video was originally recorded, some cells up here in row 1 have been moved around, which slightly changes the references in the existing VBA code. Also down here in W67 and X67, some user input cells have been added. And here the VBA code related to those 2 cells. One is here in the change event, and then up here in the selection change, which just invokes that same code here in the selection change event. It just has to deal with restoring these return on invested capital values. If the user were to change them, the user now just select W67 or can select level or gradual here. Either way, this cells would be restored. Okay, back to the original video. Now we've been through all the VBA code that resides in the spreadsheet. Let's go off and review the some of the different objects in the SQL Server database, primarily the stored procedures and tables and views. And instead of viewing it through the Management Studio, I'm going to take a look at it just through the code that's been saved off here into a text file. So SP Valuation spreadsheet open corresponds to that low-level function, VBA function, that calls this stored procedure. And you can see here it just takes these input values and then it logs the values in a table. So next one is message board. Simply takes the computer name and username. It doesn't currently do anything with it because the message that it's always displaying is just a blank message, and the value or the spreadsheet, when it sees a blank message, it doesn't have it doesn't bring up a pop-up. It just doesn't display the message. But by typing it or having the computer name and the username passed in, have the flexibility down the road to return a message very specific to that computer and username. Billboard returns text to be put in the Billboard area, and you type in the computer name, username, and those two things aren't used currently, but if wanted someday to have a Billboard information that's specific to a computer or username, that flexibility exists. You can see here that what it does is it calls it randomly switches around, and here it calls the rand function, and this results in a number between 1 and 10. Even though we only got 3 different Billboard messages, it will take a range of results coming out of that random number calculation and then call one of these 3. But right now could have 10 different messages if we wanted to. All right, the next one is spreadsheet open. That's just logging the information, and there it is, inserting into the table. Next one is TickerLog. It's just simply logging, and there it is, inserting it into the table. NarrativeLog, all the parameters are passed in, and then it simply inserts into a specific table to log that information. Here are the ticker data that's being returned. This store procedure, a text form of it is saved right in the spreadsheet in the PolarisData worksheet. But here's the storage procedure that goes against this view to pull specific fields and then returns them as PolarisData into the spreadsheet. And then these last couple of functions have to do with time. It's just as you're logging things in the database, important to know whether you're logging in central time. The getDate function in SQL always returns UTC time, or universal date time. And we can see back up here when we log dates and time that we're always selecting central time zone. But that's what this function is used for, is to convert to central time zone. And then these aren't currently used, but this would convert a specified time zone back into universal time zone. And then the last function is just a very specific format that you can see here, the kind of formatting it does, but that's not a function not currently being called by any of the code dealing with this Polaris Valuation worksheet. Okay, let's next go up here and take a look at the tables and the views that are used. The only view that's used is this one called Valuation Spreadsheet Version, and then the tables are down here. So instead of looking at them through the Management Studio, I'm going to look at it through a text file. So here's the view, and you can see here that this doing a select against the table that contains all the change of version information. But what gets returned through this view is the latest version. But keep all the version history in the table in case we ever want to go back and look and see when different versions were released. Here's the table for the version, and it just has one field in it. The version itself is a date, so there's no need to save a date with the version information. The version is a date. All right, the table is the open log, spreadsheet open log table, as in what you would expect. The log for the ticker, every time a user enters a new ticker, here's the kind of data that's stored in the table. And then every time a narrative is saved, here's the information that's saved around that narrative. Okay, that ends the code review of this Polaris Valuation spreadsheet that recreates a lot of the functionality that's found in the Polaris Investing website. So typing in here on the spreadsheet website, you type the ticker or the name of the company up here. Spreadsheet, you type it a ticker here, and then the valuation is shown here. And on the website, that corresponds to this theoretical valuation. There is no practical valuation shown in the spreadsheet. All right, thanks for watching.